Ever think you might need a little more out of life? Why not try Chasing Diamonds with Andy Caldley, a podcast aimed at bringing out the extraordinary nature of the human experience and the curiosity, wonder, and creativity that drives it. It is his most sincere hope that today's episode tickles your fancy. So now, without further ado, here is your host, Andy Caldley.
Cheers for that, Ron. My guest today is Saqib Asadullah, a dear friend and musical compatriot of mine who at 34 has lived an extraordinary life. His love of music and voracious desire for learning is very unusual, and it's part of the reason why I love working with him. And I'm always fascinated by immigrant stories as they tend to involve the kind of extreme realities that make the human experience so interesting and intense. His is no exception. And since the trials and tribulations, the hope and despair, the dark and the light belong together in this way, I've come to Saqib today so that he can offer testament to that fact. Thank you for joining me today, Saqib. How are you?
I'm doing well, Andy, and how are you doing?
I'm top of the world, thanks. I'm just happy to be back in your presence. So we just got done, or you just got done playing a concert for the benefit of Nepal and the town of Barpak, the epicenter of the earthquake that hit there a few years ago. How was that?
I think that any action taken towards the growth and the benefit of any people is always rewarding, and this in particular was just as rewarding as doing anything else for Nepal that I've done. So I genuinely enjoyed it. The people are amazing. The people that partake in some of these rebuilding exercises, including getting people together, are all extremely kind people that are working towards the growth of others.
Yes, I was very impressed with the efforts of the Gorkali Foundation in this way, especially when they mentioned that they provided the hydroelectric plant that gives more power to the disaster area than the rest of the country gets on a daily basis.
That's an interesting fact, and
it's just another example of being introduced, pulled out of my comfort zone when being, around you, involved with you. But this is obviously just one step in your long journey of crazy life experiences. But I want to wind the clock back a bit. Could you tell me a little what life was like growing up in Pakistan, what the climate was like politically, economically, and how music came into your life?
So, the political climate of a place like Pakistan in the times that I was growing up was kind of volatile. I think that the fact that, there was so much going on the streets, and the fact that I also came from Dubai right before, my parents were kind of very careful about allowing me to go out anywhere as much, just because, the streets were a little dangerous around where I used to live. And
which was where?
Which was in Karachi.
Okay.
It was not. They figured that because we had come from a different place, that I wasn't necessarily wise enough, and I would just come off as somebody who would appear to be more volatile as a result of being a foreigner and not knowing the ways, that people kind of assess you with. And I think they might have been right, but what that did for me is it allowed me to, hold back, and perhaps due to other experiences as well. I was a very shy child, and I definitely felt the quest for wisdom was something that, little reflections of those periods can definitely, remind me of where that came from. But I used to stay in the house. And even though it was a very, very small place, it was just 2 rooms. And I was reflecting on it with my parents earlier this week as well, as we were gearing to go to the Fillmore, they would be walking around like zombies because I'd be hitting things so hard, like because obviously I had this like desire to play the drums for some reason, so I used to be hitting so hard, and I used to suck obviously because it was the beginning of my life, right? So but they were so kind to me that they would just like tolerate it and like just walk around like because there was like it was very tiny place, it was just 2 rooms, I'd basically sit back and I'd try to do things by myself. It was very apparent that my mom used to say that, while she was teaching my brother as we were growing up, I used to like to do things independently and just go through the motions and the experience of having that. So definitely a shy child. And so when I used to come and visit Pakistan from Dubai, one of the most significant experiences that matters even till today in the way I operate in music is he was almost raised by one of his mentors was a peer, like a guru, a sheikh, if you will. That person, left a pretty interesting mark on my father as far as spiritual awakening is concerned. And his shrine that person has multiple shrines, and the one that is located in Karachi is the one that my dad grew up around. Now, at that particular shrine, there is this form of music from Pakistan. It's the Sufi music. It's called Qawwali. Qawwali used to take place at this shrine. So my dad used to go there as a part of his regular visits, and they have some meditative experience where they kind of go in that place and remember how it was, because that person who raised my dad, in a way, he died a while ago. So in honor of this person who was enlightened, I didn't personally meet him, but it sounds like he was enlightened because there's a lot of people who hang out over there, and these are the people that were around him. But, the masses do tend to congregate,
of course,
when there's an event going on. So the event is this huge extravaganza of like 1 or 2 performers who come over there, and they put on a show, and there's free food for everybody after that, and it's in honor of the person who just passed away. So that's how the performers earn. And I spent a lot of time with my dad when I used to visit from Dubai at this place, just hours on end, just sitting down and just a kid absorbing stuff coming from a different environment and just feeling this intense energy that these guys would bring to the table. And, Qawwali is a very, at least the form of Qawwali that, I was exposed to was very up-tempo. So they would keep you driven and just constantly at a pace where it was basically undeniable, right? It was such a strong impact emotionally on me that not a lot of experiences around had anything that they could even remotely evoke as far as emotion is concerned. So I used to sit there, and then they used to throw money at these guys because that's what one of the rituals, right? People just walk and they have like the super important person's son now, who is kind of considered also enlightened. I'm not sure how that works for as
by
far
proxy,
as
proxy enlightenment.
I don't know how hierarchy works and like whether DNA has something to do with wisdom, So whatever the case may be, this person sits over there and they go and they get him to bless the money that goes to the people who are singing, the musicians, right? And I just sit there and I looked at my dad, and I think it was like 6 or maybe 8 at best, right? I looked at my dad, I was like, Dad, I'm going to do this.
Yes.
And he goes, it's really interesting you're saying that because, and he was talking to my mom after that when we came back. He's like, haha, Saqib thinks he's going to do this. And he did it, because he thought that I was really excited about somebody getting paid. And that money was my motivation behind saying it. But I remember that evil eye that I looked at him because I was like, maybe you don't get it. But what I'm saying right now is I definitely feel like I'm going to go for this. And he was like, okay, that's cool. And it was a joke and it was over. But man, that stuff, it's something I still chase. Mm-hmm. It's my vocabulary of sorts and many different disciplines and styles of music. And I've gone back there and it's just left such a deep mark on me. And by the way, I hid playing music or being an artist in that way. I mean, what is an artist really, right? But at that point,
we'll get to that later.
The fact that I did something, and because I was so vocal, I was an exploring kid. I used to do other things, and I used to like really speak big about it, like, oh yeah, I go and play cricket, and I used to suck at it, right? But there's one thing that I just felt like I held more sacred than anything else. And I would not talk about it with people. And I just went for it. And I think that's what my life became. It was something that at first was exposed to me as a result of the political climate being very stringent and not very accommodating. But what came from within is certainly an absorption of what was going on. But wisdom, the quest for wisdom, still sparked from right between chaos. So
That's brilliant. The quest for wisdom, I think, is quite profound because you are certainly in the top 5 people I've ever met to pursue it with such a ferocity that you do. Did that also evolve from that religious community?
I don't think that anything pertaining to religion was a part of learning per se. I mean, the fact that people had good faith around me or faith in general was not something that contributed. I had to find my way through all of those things independently, which means that I wasn't necessarily religiously inclined at that time, nor do I claim to be even right now. But, it was just something that I think that those two things were independent.
Okay.
They were independent of growth. However, the quest for wisdom and the veracity, I guess, is something that led to that same energy being sent over to understanding religion and that faith model as well. Like the questions for wisdom applied to everything, including that.
Yes.
So even they were put on the table to be like, let's slice this up to make sure everything's good over here. Because my favorite moments in my journey or education are the moments that spark my memory or spark my kind of, it lit a fire, if you
There you go.
right? It lit a fire in me is when one of these guys who's a brilliant artist, who's my teacher, his name is Rahat Kazmi, and he once he had this like whole repertoire that he did, when he'd enter a class, and he was an actor, right? So he was like really large.
Okay.
He was really large in his ways, and he was very bold in his statements, and there
Brilliant.
was like he was very firm with whatever he was saying to you because it was all put together, right? So he asked these questions about, what a tree is and what a branch is, what a bird on a branch is. And he just took me through this journey of like question after question after question. And it just it blew my mind and then he also said very specifically that, what is an invalid question? Right. And he
How old are you when you're asking yourself this?
This is probably, maybe 10th grade of sorts.
Okay.
I don't know, O levels. But anyway, the fact that strain of questioning led me to, it interested me. Let's put it this way. It was interesting to me. And later on in life, when, other subjects and other disciplines were being offered to me to learn, like say, for example, in college, philosophy became one of those things that, allowed you to freely ask questions without being inhibited by language. And so that allowed, a little bit more power to come to the quest for wisdom, right?
Okay.
And so religion didn't have anything to do with it. I guess that's, if that answers your question.
I think, I feel like it's probably less religion and more just, I'm trying to find a word, but some synonym of passion or enthusiasm, just like a general, like a mental wanderlust.
There's not much in life that I attribute to luck or chance, but I do believe that it is apparent to me that there is some sort of, light or governance beyond us and our creative mind, because the blessing is passion. It's nothing else.
Because certainly I have met people who just are fairly flat in that regard.
Well, I don't want anybody.
And then you meet people like you who
I don't
that
want
fire
anybody-
burns so brightly.
I don't want anybody to believe that there is anything that can prevent you from what you want to do in life. Before I say whatever
Always
I have
covering
to say,
your tracks.
nobody is at a disadvantage. Everybody gets to win. This is the Garden of Eden that you were promised. That's how I kind of go about it. And but I know that passion is something that can be, the door for passion can be opened for anybody at any given point in time. So everybody just know that it's a concept out there, and that wisdom will come after the fact that you realize that you already have it, not like before. So passion, I've been able to articulate a lot of things that I understand, or how I've dissected them in my head, to people, and they kind of get it, but the desire to pursue it has only come from people who are passionate. And so the passion part is not something you can teach somebody, but everything else, I feel, is something we can learn and absorb and apply as however we want to do it, right? There's no strict rule per se.
I think that's good. I feel like this environment with these special enlightened people and this beautiful music, I feel like passion isn't taught. I agree with that. But I feel like passion can be awakened.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Sort of like the
That's
way
the best way to say it.
electrodes
Yeah.
interact with each other around an atom. But moving on, because before we get too deep in the rabbit hole. So you're growing up, you're experiencing these things, you're keeping this passion, this artistic drive close to your chest. But when did you decide to come to America, or did you always sort of know that you'd end up here?
I think the drive is or the quest at that point in time was what led to designing my future. And while I would have been certainly content being where I was and, pursuing whatever it is that I wanted to pursue, but it's only when things started to close up on me in that quest that I automatically, started to project the energy that I want these hurdles removed. And so I stopped, and this was an accident, I would think, that I stopped focusing in on the hurdle and just living in this dream state of what it is that I wanted to feel. Because, I came from a humble background. So to design things was imagination rather than reality.
Okay.
And that imagination led me to be, situated in a place in my dreams where I was comfortable. I wasn't bothered by anybody. I had, resources were plenty. And anything that I needed for my education would be sufficient and always available. And, then I kept on drawing in, beautiful things around it because it felt prettier in the moment, even though my reality was perhaps not as enticing at the time. So within that, when the opportunity of pursuing higher education in Pakistan came about, for various reasons, I was not in the tier of people that were going to end up in the, probably the highest rated school as possible. And even though some of my friends were going there, and in some ways now that I look back at it, it was a blessing. But all I was trying to do was not go to those schools because, I found them to be more respectful in any way. It was more that the people that I knew or I got along with, or the minds that stimulated me, were all congregating over there, and I wasn't invited to the party. So instead, having option B, or plan B, as I call it, being some second, grade situation where I would have to now associate myself, or, and again, I was very egotistical or arrogant to think that, because I'm sure those people were lovely who would have been there, right? But I just drew a blank on designing anything in my future other than one plan, which was I want to be away. And I've heard that America, is the land of freedom. I was always enticed by, packaging and products from there, I guess. So that's what kind of led me, to go to an unknown environment. It wasn't America per se, It was the unknown because the known was being very, very constricting. And I just couldn't do that. So I designed America in that sequence accidentally. And then the moment I landed over here and that first breath of air hit me outside of Cleveland Airport, the realization that I was probably like 15 and a half or 16 and I was by myself did not hit me at all. All I knew was I got it from here.
I love what you said just a moment ago about you spinning the sequence of the objective as America. And America itself was of no consequence. You created this country as an idea in your head. And how many people have done that before? Probably many, but I love
millions, I would think.
also,
right?
and not just this country, but how many people just do that on a daily life? Like when I moved to Los Angeles, that's exactly what I did. I spun LA as this place of opportunity, and I didn't take into account all the challenges that come with trying to exist in that environment.
Challenges are an interesting aspect to, you could say spinning the web or weaving a dream, whichever one you choose at whichever stage you're at, right? I think that obstacle courses are designed by intelligent minds because they would like to experience those scenarios come up in their actual lives, manifestation of an obstacle course. And the more intelligent you are, or the more you're paying attention, intelligence is just that for me. The more you're paying attention, you're emotionally engaged in your thoughts. You can create a beautiful world, and you can also destroy a beautiful world because everything that you do is with intention. You see what I'm saying? So
yes.
So I think that America for me, and again, it's about tidbits that you hear about somebody having a better time over there, or it's easier to perhaps, do something. And honestly, I don't even remember what the specifics were, or maybe I do.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So that's how I ended up in America, is because I did not have a plan B. I only had a plan A, and the plan A was to pursue my desire to learn my art. And I always felt that because I designed it that way, I'm sure there's a lot of people back home who've done exceptionally well with whatever resources they had, but I just kind of designed it like that, so I ended up over here. But once I did, and I was by myself and I was on my own, I never ever, I'd really always, and to date, feel that I was given an opportunity that I will never take for granted. Because there were people around me who I saw who were qualified in every sense of the word, somehow denied the opportunity to learn because they just didn't get that pass. But when I did, I felt that it was just exactly in line with what I wanted. So I should definitely make sure that I preserve the value of it. And I wake up every day thinking about that before I begin my day.
That's well, I have no comment. You covered everything. Quick question before we move on. What fragments of American culture filtered over to you as a young man in Pakistan?
So I was exposed to a little bit more than perhaps other individuals may be exposed to. It's because I grew up in Dubai, the first 8 or 9 years of my life. So culturally speaking, a lot of information travels to those places in the Middle East before it did way back in the day in Pakistan. So fragments of America. Let's start off with, obviously there's always products and stuff like that were available, chains of like Kentucky Fried Chicken, for example.
Okay.
He was in Dubai. But I think that somehow, some way, this one, gentleman by the name of Michael Jackson took over the world, and I was just a part of his world at that time because he somehow arrived in my neighborhood grocery store, on the shelf, and literally that it can't be truer than that. There was like a supermarket underneath my building. So
Wow.
and Michael Jackson appeared over there, and it was the first form of physical audio art that was given to me and I held in my hand as a human being, because it was gifted to me by my dad. And we used to really like the packaging. Me and my brother used to really like the packaging, the cassette packaging that it would come in.
Yeah.
So for all of the other tapes that we had, because my dad bought like a few of them for himself, I guess he must have started. We used to rip out the covers, the actual inlays of the artists, just so that we could see the awesome packaging, the plastic box. But I do remember distinctly that Michael Jackson's Bad, for example, right, never had that thing torn apart from it, because it was important enough for it to have him like on his toes, like with that whole like black jacket.
Yeah.
He was too cool for us, and he was too cool for me, and he always will be, I guess. But that was a significant part of it that must have associated America to me. But these are just some of the fragments of my imagination, or my what I remember, my memories.
Well, that's as good as an answer as I could possibly put. Michael Jackson.
He took over the world, man. Everybody in the middle of nowhere. I always when people talk about impact and how loud you can be, right? I always look at it this way, right? I mean, the reason why somebody like Michael Jackson is incredible to me is, the energy that he emanated literally encompassed the globe comfortably. You can go to Pakistan in the middle of nowhere, and you could be right next to the beach, and you'd see a guy, and this actually happened. So you'd see a guy walking, his camel, and there's like barely like 5 people on this entire beach. So he's walking up and down to be like, "Yo, anybody want to ride?" Right? The camel, so he can make some money. And there was a kid right next to him that was his son, because he's like, obviously babysitting, right? I mean, the son's on the job too. So that kid knew Michael Jackson's move, and he, like while we were there, somebody, one of these guys was talking and whatever. So I think the guy who was, offering his camel for a ride asked like where everybody was from. And, somebody said, from abroad or something like that. And the kid just like busted out a Michael Jackson move. And I was just like, wow. Wow. I mean, you could be a lot of people in this world, and that remote corner of the world will not hear about you because you're not that important. But apparently, if you dance and you sing really well, and it's all in time, and you have this incredible breathing ability with your nose to like hit these extremely high pitched notes, you can definitely be at the center of attraction.
Just it goes to show that there are places in the world that people would have you believe are lands occupied by people from the 16th century, but in reality it's like more reaches them and more connects them to you than you might imagine.
People look at social networking now, and some of the pros that are suggested for that are that you have access to information, and you're able to now become a part of a global audience. But you know what? There's something that is a prerequisite to all that. There's an energy and a frequency that's floating around. And sometimes when it's really strong, it's like a wave, and the air that the wave, dispels as it crashes in, onto the shore. I mean, there's this like slight push from the air that it actually, has made a pocket out of, right? And that's how I look at it. Sometimes you're big, and, Obama's big, right?
Yeah.
Obama emanates an energy, which is very powerful, and I appreciate that.
You're definitely the best orator we've had over the last couple decades.
Yeah, and you're just so careful, well put together, and definitely, again, it's easy to say that he was just wired or born like that, but he's worked very hard at being honest in so that it's transparent, and it's also something that means a little bit more than him. So I do appreciate him a lot.
Yeah, I mean, as a former vocal coach, I taught a lot of people that finding your voice, your ability to speak clearly, eloquently to people that you don't know, people who might disagree with you, that's a huge fear. Public speaking, one of the biggest things that people have to overcome to be comfortable with their voice in a public environment is understanding that there are some people that might disagree with you. And that was clearly something that he had nailed down from a very early age. But I think that's a good point, and we're gonna, before we get into politics, because I can argue about his honesty.
No, I think it's not as I'm also speaking about the more real situations, not when you're trying to sell something, right? I mean,
naturally,
at the end of the day, he's a brilliant salesperson too, and that's what campaigns are about, right?
Yeah, right. I want to move on to you breaking down, because one thing I try to objective on this show is to introduce perspective. That's something that's hugely important to, I believe, the mental growth of a human being. One thing that there's one thing that will give you perspective that you can't get anywhere else and really change your views quicker than most things. And that's to talk, have a conversation with somebody who came to this country without having a grasp of what this country is about. So you arrive in Cleveland Airport, what did you say, like 16 and a half?
Yeah, something like that.
Crazy
yeah.
young number.
Yeah.
How did you go about, you say you got it from here, right? Some people don't have that kind of confidence.
Well,
but I
want to
know, exactly, right? I want to know how you found your feet and how quickly it happened. What steps did you take?
So I would not necessarily. So first things first, right? I just knew that whatever it is that I wanted to do was going to somehow come together, because I didn't have an option to think otherwise, right? The fact that something, this, miraculous of sorts had occurred, when the chances of me, wishing for something and for it to come true, were so low, because I come from a place where, merit does not necessarily equal success or value.
Whatever your politics is, I think the universal agreement has to be meritocracy. If you do not believe that your hard work will achieve you anything, then there is a destruction of the human spirit.
I certainly agree with that. And just because that was something of, that was a concept that was introduced to me, I had to get rid of it in order to pursue my own journey. And so, steps forward, I still hadn't fallen in love with education at that stage. So those were the milestones that were coming up, right? I just knew that something that I had wished for had come true. And so guiding whatever it is that I wanted to do was not necessarily something that had been weaved and perfected altogether, but it was about experiences, and that's something new. And I, to date, also maintain that the unknown is the most beautiful space to be in, because that is where creation occurs. I don't think that knowing something or calculating or predicting it is bad. But I think that when you find yourself, due to external circumstances, as being stranded, that is a beautiful thing, because what is about to show up is going to be the consequence of your immediate design.
That was very well put, Saqib. I enjoyed that immensely.
So,
as you were.
Yeah. So, following that, I started to go to class, because I ended up in a college. So the reason why I ended up at Cleveland Airport is because I was admitted to the College of Worcester, and the choice for College of Worcester, which was
Worcester, Mass.
No, this was in Worcester, Ohio. So the College of Worcester.
Yeah.
Okay. And didn't know anything about the school either. Didn't know the value of it or the lack thereof, which again had to arrive after I had experienced that. I heard about it, and a counselor recommended it, but I chose to look at it as something that was going to be beautiful and just right for me to grow, because I didn't have another option. So whatever plan A was that it was going to be found shortly after the next moment or even next experience. Now, being over there, I was pursuing things that I thought I was supposed to pursue. And those are coming from two different places. Studying music or even knowing that I was going to do that for sure was not necessarily clear, but I was feeling suffocated in going out and trying to do something that I wanted. By the way, some of the constriction was also based on resources, or the lack of, because I felt like I wanted to learn something, but there wasn't just enough of it available. So that's why I had to design American the Dream, so that I could actually expose myself, because I just didn't have places to learn the things that I wanted to. And also the time, I was always in front of the people that I was beginning in front of. And there's obviously the element of some kind of fire burning inside you when somebody's like, hey, you suck. Of course I do. I just started, but I'm looking forward to, like learning something else about it. But I just didn't have those avenues per se. So that's why I designed that thing. But anyway, coming to College of Worcester, a brilliant school, as I learned shortly after getting there, because it was tough. And, I wasn't necessarily, kicking ass at it or anything like that. But I've always had, there's, between a ceiling and a floor, I've always had a threshold that I will not cross, because I do not want to disappoint, even at that time, my parents, because I appreciate their value and wisdom, and I certainly take into account their, understanding and their dreams. Not that I would follow or get dictated anything, but one of the most beautiful things that I have experienced in my lifetime is not being told what to do, but still having an expectation somewhere that, like approval is not very easy.
Was that floor exclusively the domain of your parents, or was there a certain amount of the arrogance and egotism that you mentioned earlier making a part of those floor tiles as well?
I'd say self-respect.
Okay.
Self-respect for what is it that I, would not allow myself. I do agree with you that self-respect may also have a component of arrogance and ego underneath it, because you are envisioning yourself being at a certain stage, but not being anything under that, because what is under that is something you look down on.
Exactly. Let us combine those three words to pride.
Sure.
I think can well sum up those three adjectives.
Absolutely. And, pride is a journey, because you only after you've actually been, proud of something unnecessarily do you understand that it was pride.
Mm-hmm.
And since it's an after the fact thing, you realize it, you look at it and you say, it's not coming from a place of honesty or sincerity, because that's what pride is, right? If it's
it's very easily pride is one of the easiest things to. It's so identifiable in that if you feel that pride, if you feel proud of something or prideful about something or someone else, it's an ultimate truth that you have no control over, and it's so identifiable. You know immediately. Okay, if you are not proud of your writing, let's just take writing for example. If you are not proud of your writing, you couldn't care one way or another if somebody likes it or not. You don't care about bettering your craft so that people can enjoy your writing more, then you don't truly care about it. But if somebody begins to put your writing down and you begin to feel it, it wounds your pride, and that is such an identifiable way of knowing that you care about something.
Pride to me has a little, it's got more to that definition. I think pride is the result of, it's called foolish pride, not foolish proud, right? Because it's foolish pride. Pride is something which is the result of slightly overestimating, a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of cockiness, there's cocky funny, but there's cocky, which is straight arrogant. So I do want to say that I am very proud of the fact that I, capitalized on some of the opportunities, knowing in that moment that if I did not do so, I would not be content or happy with my decision. So I'm proud that I actually was conscious enough to take an action. But when it comes to pride, I would associate that specifically in my life as, I was very prideful when I actually claimed that I did something or I was very good at something without actually being able to have the substance to back it up. But, the design of, when it becomes something that satisfies you is the result of, taking the steps in the journey without, without complaining about it, because it's not the light at the end of the tunnel that's important. It's the journey. It's the journey within.
So the tunnel itself.
The or just the fact that you have the ability to travel towards the light. Even that is
okay.
amazing.
I like that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I entirely disagree. My views on pride are a little different. Anyway, a simple thing that often gets overlooked. I was when I was traveling Europe, I listened to a book on tape, Total Recall, Arnold Schwarzenegger's incredible life story. Anyway, one thing that often gets overlooked in immigrant stories, which I think should be recognized as a big challenge, is did you come here with a knowledge of our language?
Yes. So, having grown up in a place like Dubai, I was able to speak in English. In fact, I was perhaps worse at my own native language, but the importance of having that language preserved in my household is very strong. Although I've taken the liberty of really embracing it, and being a component of or rather a student of that language as well. But English was definitely not my first language per se. And it was not my mother tongue, but I did grow up speaking it to the point where when I moved to Pakistan, that was one of those identifiable features that I was talking about, which would actually get me in trouble on the streets.
Okay.
Because I would speak between both languages, and I would be very easily identifiable as a child that did not know the ways, at least how my parents looked at it. However, when I actually came to this country, and I experienced professors and people who were actually in command of the language as a result of it appearing in writing form. That's when I realized that I actually did not know much at all, and that whatever I spoke was most likely the result of information that was absorbed through various avenues, like perhaps film. Perhaps however I was interpreting Archie comics, maybe, you know what I'm saying? But that would be another fragment, by the way, of America that would have actually led me to understand a little bit more about what could possibly be going on. Because that was Little Town America, I guess, right? I mean, where all these kids were growing up, and and there was the aspect of somebody who was slightly more well off, like Veronica or whatever that character, right? And then there's Archie, and then there's Reggie and stuff like that. So I guess that was definitely a part of that, but not knowing how to actually articulate myself. But that may have also come because I didn't care to do so. I could have actually acquired that skill a little better because the teachers that I had, certainly expected that off of me. Right? They were like, hey, speak better, write better.
Right.
But I didn't care for it as much because I did not know the value of how it contributed to my life. There's certainly a theme and a thread in my life is pursuing anything as a result of logical reasoning. Sometimes we are told what to do by parents, because it's good for you. I mean, I certainly can't disagree with that either, because not all decisions can be, made independently when you're, when you're a child.
Yes,
when you're a child. But I think the ability to ask a question at any given stage and to pursue with the understanding that you have, given all the knowledge that you can receive as well, is everybody's right. And so I certainly, put that, as first, before I pursue anything, is to just question where it's coming from and then taking action.
Okay, that makes sense. I just wanted to establish more of the climate of you in your arrival, because I'll be honest, when I asked that question, I had a bet with myself, and I'm like, I'll bet he says he couldn't speak English, because I didn't know one way or another.
No, I certainly had the ability to speak it. I could have a conversation with people, but how much of me was getting through to them?
That's a very important thing, because there's a lot of you, or maybe there wasn't at that point. Who knows? But so you are Worcester College, Ohio. How did you end up down in Washington? Or before we jump that far, at what point along this journey did you begin to pursue music?
So it's always traveled with me. I was trying to figure it out. Even in a very small college dorm room, there was always a drum set, or there was some or the other insinuation around me, whether it be sticks or cymbals or whatever, that there was something that was very close to me that I would always have, and I would certainly pursue it. And even in college, like I took courses on music as well. I was always tied to it, and it was my personal time. I always listened to music, perhaps not good stuff in the beginning, but the Qawwali part, for example, the great stuff, that always tied in with me. That was stuff that I used to travel with. The little devices that hold music, CDs and stuff like that, at the onset were available. So I would definitely have my little collection of things that I would walk around with. And so it wasn't that I necessarily wasn't, that there was a time that I started it specifically. It was always traveling along, but I don't think that I had understood how to actually seek it. And when I say seek it, I mean that, it's something that I do and it's something that I love, but, perhaps my growth isn't quantifiable, or that, it's just a hobby of sorts and people know that I do it. I think it was important for me to let people know that this is something that I do, but I didn't know when to back out of that plan, because it was too, that distinction between somebody judging you for your skill, at any given point in time, is the direct result of how much time you spent on that skill. I think that realization hit me, so I certainly held back on my exposure of that. But once I figured out, and this is through readings, through teachers, through masters who've done other things in the world, of consequence, that I realized that, it's important to have a teacher, and it came from just being around in a college environment where I would see these guys who were so into their economics, they would love to talk about it. And there's different disciplines. There's this, acting coach who's just so uber, extravagant in their demeanor, because they embody that education, the love for the art, right?
For sure. I remember working briefly with an acting coach. I'd not working in taking lessons, but we were both part of a production, and one of my co-actors, one of the other actors in the performance is doing her lines, and the coach just stops and says, whoa. What was your relationship like with your father? They're just intense people, man. They understand, you think of acting as an art, but their understanding of the human emotion in their brain, they are way more qualified to talk about psychology than certainly me, but many people who probably study psychology as a science.
I have a deep respect for psychology. I have a deep respect for it being a discipline that is almost, one of those fundamental variables in understanding the human condition, and the human condition as it pertains to the way our minds work in these times is the direct result of the psychological study, the study of psychology, and also the psychological experimentation that has been conducted on man. So I think that in any of the arts, like you were giving the example of an acting coach, the understanding of how the human brain perceives things is incredibly important for the careful characterizing of what is learned behavior, what is behavior that is inherently in you because you're wired, and certainly behavior that is beyond our control. Emotions and invoking certain emotions is something that is within our control.
Yes.
And that, I think, is a huge contribution to my understanding of music and how I approach it. And as a result of some film project that I was working on, where the director was providing us words because they were on set shooting, and he was like, "Hey, I want a piece on intrigue. I want a piece on flirtatiousness, right?" And I'd be like, "Flirtatiousness, all right." And you would suddenly go into this like entire banter of how you understand it on a piano, right? So emotions coming from psychological understanding of what an emotion is and then how to invoke it became a part of my journey, my quest for wisdom, because I knew, this particular subject matter is available to be tapped into and accessed should you want to go a tad bit deeper in how you present your art. And to your thing about the coach, the reason why they are so qualified is because they understand multiple disciplines as they pertain to their discipline. And when they combine those powers, right, that's what allows them to seek the most in-depth information from the universe about that subject matter. So music was something that I was almost, the liberal arts component of my college was one of the most, important parts of my journey, because I was studying how to ask questions in multiple disciplines. Psychology, philosophy being another one. I have a minor in that too. Economics being probably the one that I was majoring in and the least important to me because at the time. But now that I know that business is an important part of my life, and how to conduct it and how to look at some things, as simple as doing something, to a certain level where economies of scale can kick in. It's kind of I use those concepts like very over they encompass a lot of my journey, perhaps. So once I got out of college and I had finished the responsibility that I felt that I had on, making sure that my parents felt, that I had done something, of consequence. Because, getting out of college, it was all very well thought out, actually, because, getting a degree in music, for example, was something that could not be funded very easily. But getting a degree in economics could be funded as a result of grades, because you could get scholarships and stuff like that. And not only that, I would have to, in order to pursue my journey and my quest for wisdom via the arts, I had to have an economically sustainable background and foreground that I was actually getting towards. I mean, I had to see it being something that I could use to not only, help my parents perhaps back home, because everybody's economic condition needed to be improved, right? With that, I needed to make sure that I pursued whatever. So it was a long, winded journey, because I wasn't blessed enough, or I wasn't given the opportunity to say, "Hey, Saqib, would you like to learn music? Here's a teacher, here's a bunch of money, go and learn it." I had to find my way around everything to chase my dream of living. And what was the dream? It's not some, fantastical approach to, grandiosity through, fame or anything like that. It was never that. It was just, I wanted to learn something and I wanted to do it every time I woke up. And I wanted to do it that day. That's it.
How much of that dream do you now feel you've captured?
Without sounding too, cocky, I think I'm blessed enough to wake up every morning and do exactly what I had imagined. I am living exactly what I feel content with. I do this on a daily basis, and this is my life, and everything works in harmony as a result of me chasing what it is that I love to do, rather than something that was
sort of a sign.
Yeah. In retrospect, there were times in which I felt that I was doing something that was not of value, and at first by accident, but then after that by intentional choice, I immediately change the environment, the scenario, the premise behind what it is that I don't like, because I only like to do what I do. That's the only way to live that I know.
That you have to take certain drastic approaches if you're serious about such things.
And at sometimes they may be that you cut something off immediately because you feel like it is detrimental to your, your emotional state of mind, perhaps, right? But sometimes you think about that moment and you say, no, this must be sustained for X amount of time in order for you to get where you need to be. And at that point in time, the smarter choice is to hang in there and make sure that you're driving towards plan A again.
Absolutely. So, just last question. I have prepared at least. So, you have achieved in large part the sequences, the world that you spun for yourself in Dubai or Karachi or wherever. And now that you have it, you have a beautiful house. You have a drum kit made of wood that's extinct. It's from Brazil or some shit. I don't know. You have an expansive existence, and it's very admirable and beautiful. So in your life now, what we'll call them entity or entities determine the direction that you take in expanding on this dream that you've created, this nest that you've feathered for yourself?
The best way to answer that, in his discourse on the method, Descartes actually said, what was it? Cogito ergo sum, which is, I think, therefore I am. And that seems to be the premise behind how I kind of live my life. There are no such entities or entity that will govern my direction. But I think, therefore I am, is the reason why I'm operating. So if I'm alive, and until I'm alive, I'm on this quest. And this seems to be an expression that I am finding, ways to unfold the puzzles of the universe. And that is how I look at life. What happens after I clock out is not of consequence to me at this stage, because doing good and being here right now is equally as important as what is technically the unknown at that time. So, playing a part in now by being a part of it and actively engaging with it is all there is needed for that direction to pan out. It is whatever that I dream of, and its manifestation. The only thing that is a prerequisite to that is me breathing. If I'm breathing, I'm already on that journey. It's not really something that is going to be governed by anything necessarily outside. All the tools that I need to solve the puzzles that I'd like to engage with are already here. And I am happy to be, just living through experiences every day and every moment. So, whatever comes from it is something I'm looking forward to. But I think I have the tools to ask the right questions.
Okay, that's good. I mean, my thoughts are more maybe entity. I'm trying to think like what was the most recent thing, the most recent art, you've been calling them disciplines, so we'll use that word.
Mm-hmm.
What has been the most recent discipline that you've pursued with the desire to have deeper understanding of it? And how did you come to desire pursuing it?
A lot of the things that I engage with or have engaged with, are things that interest me. I mean, it could be as something as simple as foosball, and just playing my heart out, right? Just because it's something that I find, brings me into the now, like not a lot of things do. That and riding a bike, perhaps, where you have to be here right now to stay alive. Our lives are so automated. That you get into your car and there's beauty of like perfect sound coming out of the car, and like the car is just whizzing and whistling because the turbos are on, right? The fact that anything is an opportunity for you to engage in, and you're choosing which one it's going to be. The catalyst stems from paying attention to everything in its entirety. So the ones that you like, you want to experience more of. And that can only happen if you're constantly paying attention. So once I find something to be interesting enough to dissect further, I get into it. Now, things that actually occur.
Well, I just want to take a second and say, only that answer could have merited that long pause.
Yeah. It's genuinely something that, if I enjoy something, I pursue it, but I don't pursue anything for, layer 1 or layer 2. That might be the inherent, OCD or aggressive nature that I, am just wired with, is that I care about the granularity of life. I care about the details. I care about everything that makes up the surface and how the surface comes about. So in that, in that vein, art to me is seamless when it's absorbed and it feels like it's easy, but it's only art after it has been looked into, dissected in so many layers that the most refined components are the ones that surface from it. And that's the catalyst for anything that I engage in. There may be multiple disciplines. I'm really into the inner workings of technology as it pertains to, the presentation of my art, but down all the way to the code of how something is put together, the software and the hardware tying in, a different aspect of my life that, brings together the basically the product that constitutes enough merit to evoke emotion. Everything else, including a painting a wall, does that for me, because when I'm painting a wall, I want to make sure that, not only is the texture of the wall as intended, but what is that going to do in relationship with everything around it to evoke that emotion of perhaps the space or whatever it is that I am trying to capture or, bring out from within myself.
That makes sense. I think you said it very well. Just in case any of the listeners missed it, the fact that you mentioned that the catalyst is everything. And by paying attention to everything is how you find the 1 or 2 or 5 or 80 different disciplines that you want to pursue at any given time. Like the only reason I got into art as a spectator, and I wanted to learn more about it, I'm like, okay, so what the fuck's up with all this color? Like, how does it pertain to emotion? The only reason that happened, it was because I was traveling. I don't think I would have done that just at rest at home. When you're traveling, you become a different. I kind of think that you have a different personality for every tiny phase of your life. You become a different sort of person. But when you're a traveler, when you go and open yourself, offer yourself freely to the cultures of other countries, other time periods, your ability to intake is greatly increased because you no longer are the authority on shit. So when I was in Italy and seeing all this beautiful art, all these beautiful sculptures, the only reason I would have enjoyed it as much as I did and got home and left such a lasting impression on me, seeing the masterpieces of Botticelli, sorry. Botticelli is the opera singer. Botticelli or Van Gogh or Theodore, I can't remember, Chassereau. I can't remember how to pronounce his name. Anyway, seeing their paintings, the reason it stays with me as when I came home was because I was looking at them, not a learned adult, but a dumb American who didn't know anything about it.
The stimulus due to external events or objects in this case is an important and necessary component of being centered, recentered again. I could not agree more with you on how important it is for everybody to seek travel. My travels, coming to this country and beyond, have allowed me to further, bring myself into questioning everything and, accommodating perspective in order to build my own person. So traveling is absolutely imperative, but when travel is complemented by, works of art that inspire you, and that work of art for me is also the natural landscape of our lives, which is, I am very rarely as inspired by, objects created by man as I am with the natural universe, with the mountains, the water, the aspect of nature and the grandiosity of it, and how inconsequential I am as a part of it. That really, really, gives me the power to know that, everything that I am a component of, or this journey as it stands, it is my obligation, and it is imperative that I pay attention to all of it in order to better understand what's going on. With that being said, though, I think this last weekend, I saw two of Picasso's paintings, a Monet and a Van Gogh, and multiple other, art, pieces of art from artists, 1800s we're talking about, right? The pink and the blue era for Picasso. And the inspiration that I felt as a result of being in the spaces, and I've always been a proponent of call it like it is. If it's a Picasso and it sucks, I generally, now the thing is, whether it sucks or not is completely related to what my understanding of it is, but whatever it evokes from within me. Lighting shows are awesome for that reason. It's like, you're not expecting something to actually hit you because it ties in with something else, perhaps a piece of audio, and it gets you because, that's how it was designed to evoke a certain emotion. So anyway, traveling Europe, seeing these castles, which were a huge part of, my love for cast iron, for example, and, my quest for wisdom through cast iron and the designs that pertain to multiple stages.
How many humans in the history of the world have ever said my quest for knowledge through cast iron? I want that on a bumper sticker.
Of cast iron. So, seeing those, periods reflected back at you, and the pieces of art that still hold so strong and timeless because of how novel they are in themselves, but also because of the contribution they made in order for other people to be able to think beyond that. Some have not yet been able to think beyond that. Yeah? But our goal should always be to not regurgitate. It is to absorb everything pertaining to our disciplines, and then being able to at least attempt to speak with a voice within that actually pushes that discipline forward. If the quest for knowledge only is to absorb and to not be able to further because you've understood the questions that have already been asked, then I believe it's a little irresponsible and a little selfish as well, because at that point in time we're just absorbing all of it. But it is an inherent characteristic of traveling that you automatically are encompassed within an idea bigger than yours, and because you're a part of it after that, you walk the rest of your life, allowing it to breathe through you. So
I like that, and it reminded me of a certain aspect of my upbringing. My mother and father were born religious, sent to Catholic schools. I think my mom actually Lutheran, but it didn't make a lasting impression on them. They do not carry that with them today. However, when we were growing up, my mom felt it important, we being my sister and my brother and I, growing up, my mom felt it important because she knew that we would be around people around kids who had a spiritual idea already imprinted upon them. So that it was important that we had, maybe call it ammunition in that regard. So we would have, she taught us more about sort of modern spirituality, the idea that there is, an energy field and that we all draw and give from this. And she taught us of Deepak Chopra's The 7 Spiritual Laws of Life, one of which is, I thought, really goes along nicely with what you were just referring to about the quest for knowledge has to be both ways. The law is that giving brings forth receiving and receiving brings forth giving. And if you stop that flow, you become like the Dead Sea. So I like that a lot in the sense that you can absorb as much information as you want, but the true greatness, the climactic greatness of absorbing information, having knowledge, having wisdom, is why the oldest profession in the world isn't being a prostitute, it's being a teacher. The oldest profession in the world is to find somebody who doesn't know something and to teach them something.
It's also a great responsibility. Teaching is, over the years of my, traveling, been presented to me in different manners, but my most important, important influences in life are my teachers. So I take that particular part of, relaying information, the right information, very, very seriously. And I feel like it's a responsibility to speak on a subject authoritatively when you have actually
gained authority on it.
On only that part of the subject. So it is very important to relay information with boundaries around it because, some kid failed and had to be held back in school because Pluto was apparently not on his list of planets. But then again, later on, he would have actually slid through because apparently it didn't work out for science.
There you go.
So you know what I'm saying? So we can't be too finite in our approach to relaying information as though it is law. Yes, oil and water don't mix, but on planet Earth, at least. It just might be that we're a part of something bigger than that. And so to claim authority and to pass it on as though it is the only way is certainly detrimental to the growth of mankind and human beings and just conscious thought.
But even in that, even in claiming authority and projecting wisdom as the ultimate messenger of that is detrimental, but it creates often not only the result of informing people, but also the idea in your the idea in the student's mind that being an authoritative figure on whatever particular discipline is obtainable.
I think more important than becoming an authoritative figure on any discipline is to be one with the discipline first, right? I mean, to become a teacher or an authority on something is an accident. It happens. You realize it after the fact, not before. You just keep on doing what you do and you chase it because you're just hungry about what other piece of knowledge is going to lead you to open up this, sea of information, and you just keep on getting closer to it. But when somebody who is, about to get onto a boat to go into the deeper part of the sea in order to jump off asks you a question, the area that they can see of that experience, you can give them a good account for what they could experience, what could be things that they, that they might be exposed to, but you go ahead and give them your, experience out of it for what it's worth, but not that the only way to do it. A better way to do based on, option A, B, C, and D is B, as tried by me, but A, C, and D are still options that you could pursue. I looked at historically, A resulted in this for somebody else, so historical evidence led me to actually use that as something that I would have eliminated directly. That kind of thing, right? So,
I mean, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I mean, yeah, for the most part. My thought though is that any spark can light a fire. It doesn't have to be the biggest or the most authoritative spark that can set that fire. So I think as long as people are passing on information of any kind, you are fulfilling not an obligation, but let's say you are continuing the natural progression. The natural progression being the absorption and then the dispersion of information, knowledge. Like, and to touch on your point earlier about speaking with authority on a subject, how many things on this earth can any human truly speak on authority on? Well, you would have to assume mathematics, the scientific theory, these are the studies of truth, what we know to always exist. You know, when we talk about
in our
2 plus 2 will always equal 4. Just because
that's the law that we kind of created, right?
So
in some ways, yeah.
So there are this goes pretty deep. Obviously, most people don't bother to think about it this way. But when you talk about, or like for instance, why does it go from B to C? Why isn't there no B sharp?
Well, there is the microscale, theories actually go into that whole, thing. But one quick point I wanted to make,
Go for it.
And I wanted to just add to your example of the spark that you said, right? Perhaps if we consider not being the spark or worrying about where it came from, somebody that I really respect once said to me, and it's been very meaningful and it's carried forward, is it's not as important to be the spark, it's important to be around lit branches. Because should you be around lit branches, the fire will become stronger and it'll stay burning for a longer time. So people who have wisdom around you, who are seeking it, are important people to be around. So you can, through their different avenues of seeking wisdom, learn the ways in which they are asking questions. That's all. It's not important to be the authority on a subject, but it's important to know that you are around branches that already have fire, albeit small, but together these branches can actually create a larger fire, which may become bigger and stronger. But it isn't necessary, nor is it important, because at some point in time, fires die, and who cares, right?
For all of his faults, the comedian Brian Callen, whose podcast I listen to a lot, the Brian Callen Show and The Fighter and the Kid are both wonderful podcasts. For all of his goofiness and horrible inaccuracies, he does say one thing that I really, really like, which I say to a lot of people, and this was just like the spark of his enthusiasm for this topic fell in the Tinder bundle of my face. And so he says, and I love this, it's not so much when you're talking and questioning about human mental aptitudes. You want to talk not so much about what they think or what they do. You want to talk about how they think and how they do.
Yeah.
The process that they use to take information and bring it somewhere in their mind is a lot more important than what they actually do or what that information actually is.
That is exactly why we seek great minds. And great minds come, that's why these great artists, these great people who've done wonders for the world, and not just artists, I mean people who have actual consequence, right? I mean, the artist community is, let's not go so far as to think that we are making any contribution to life, right? The great minds that discovered things of consequence, like electricity, for example, right? Those are the ones, and their process is exceptionally important, because you may not be looking for the next thing which equals electricity, because that's something that you find out after the fact, that that is the impact of it. But what you want to seek is the intention and the detail behind detail and precision behind their questioning and their process. We're not all out there to change the world, but in the event that we choose to do or attempt to do so, we should all have the ability to do so, because the next person that did it for something else, but you have the ability to use that, information. I'm very, very drawn to macro perspectives because I've been so, focused in on the micro perspective for such a long time, which is absolutely imperative in order to get to the macro. You don't start with the macro,
Yes.
right? So because I've been into the weeds for so long, that now when I actually meet minds that actually look at things from a from a higher vantage point, I appreciate that, and I see how everything basically comes together and what it takes for that system to reside as a result of the tiniest piece of information growing and fitting into the larger puzzle.
Oh, for sure. Where would you say that this is? I'd like to answer this question as well for myself. But where, in terms of you mentioned meeting people who, I guess you said, think or comprehend from a higher elevation.
Mm-hmm.
How high do you think your elevation is when you consider whatever you are considering?
I've been, humbled and blessed to be in the company of people who have actually done things that have changed the world. It was obviously an accident that, I was in their, physical company. But, those things can happen if you seek them, right? So if you design them. I do believe that how high, again, is not necessarily something that can be quantified, but what can be quantified is that by paying attention to each and every person that you meet, you will find the one person within those 5 or 6, as we were talking about previously, that will kind of command your attention or capture it in a way where you will seek more out of it, whether it's voluntary or involuntary. And then you basically, seek that through. But having people around that actually have a better way of thinking is not a guarantee that you will be allowed to be a part of that in person. You have to then learn how to make sure that your journey is sustainable enough. And people who are thinking are people who are very conscious of having abrupt and, infant ideas at their infancy around them, because it's of no consequence to them. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a beautiful thing. But people who have arrived at any particular level of dissection in life appreciate anybody who is on the honest journey towards that, even if they're at the bottom of the ladder. So when I find situations in which somebody is very, careful about teaching something that somebody else is asking for. That's a good way of understanding teaching too, right? Somebody asks me for a piece of information, I will be as honest and transparent about it. But for me to voluntarily share it, to say, hey, this is the law, everybody follow, get in a group, become an army, and let's do this, right? That part is not as important to me as the second part, which is somebody seeks information and I give it to them. Or the way I've seen it happen many times is that somebody is actually consciously choosing not to give it. When that kind of situation occurs, then not only is the learning to be questioned because it's being hoarded, in a way, there's a selfish response to that. But when the openness of that dialogue comes in, of teaching as a result of your experience and somebody looking up to you, you can say that that those steps are basically in the right direction of quest for wisdom rather than quest for fame, greatness, or an idea that is too novel. And that being the premise behind it. So, anybody who is learning and is coming up is always appreciated, always. And it should be, because the greatest teachers never looked around them to say, oh, you are actually doing something that I do as well. I shouldn't give him the secret sauce. No, you can take the secret sauce if you'd like, if you think there is one, right? You can take the secret sauce, because anybody who actually is on their path has the tools to unfold the path further. They're ahead of you, so you respect them. And anybody who's coming up, you actually appreciate and encourage them, because aptitude is relative. You cannot assume that somebody that doesn't know something in a particular subject is in any way, shape, or form behind you on anything. Everybody has the right to catch up, conquer, go further in any way, shape, or form. And one of the most beautiful things that one of my teachers said to me once was, literally, there's prodigy kids who do the things that I do. You can find them on YouTube if you wanted to. 3-year-old just playing kick-ass drums, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, what?
Yeah, we used to. We watched so many of those.
Yeah, so you look at that, and what do you do next? You're like, dude, let's close shop. I mean, this subject has been but it's not like that, because what I have grown to learn in 10 years is something that somebody else will be able to do in 6 months. But what I experienced in 2 years of my life, somebody may not be able to experience at all in their life. So you know that for yourself, and you also respect that for somebody else. So you keep on moving forward, trucking forward, and you dispel nothing but the truth, right? Do you actually exchange nothing but the truth with people, and you allow them to grow in their journey, because this is not a competition at all. We are here, and we are at our best when we are thinking we are in the now, and we have everything that makes us feel fulfilled. That's it. I love it when people ask questions. I've always been known to be the man with 1,000 questions.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I've always have questions ready for everybody, but again, lined up with my journey. I don't care about somebody wearing a dress and where it's coming from. That could be the least of my concerns. I'm just like, hey, I meet an audio engineer. I'm like, dude, I'm stuck with this little piece of the puzzle with a particular compressor not reacting a certain way, whatever.
Yeah.
My world's working, and
For sure.
and always have a relevant question. And rarely have I found somebody to look at me after I've asked the question and not be like, I would love to tell you, because apparently that I know that I understand.
Yeah, I mean, there's very few times I've been around you and ever felt that I was on your level of aptitude. But there would be these strange moments where then you'd just be very honest, and you just ask me some basic, like before we were setting up, you're like, tell me the things about talking on a radio show, and I was taken aback for a second. I was like, oh wow, he doesn't know that. I just expect you to know anything. But I want to go back a little further as well. You talking about teachers being so important. Who in their life has experienced great influences upon them that were not in some way or another a teacher or an authoritative, inspiratory figure? Like I studied opera for a bit, and Madame Palmieri, my teacher, she would say things to me that would make no sense. For instance, she'd say, no, you have to sing in your crow zone. That means nothing to anybody except her and me in that moment. But even then, I couldn't get the grasp of it. But then she then used another random expression. And for some reason, I was able to perfectly grasp what she was trying to instruct me to do. The voice is kind of tricky because the nature of it is something that is totally invisible. We cannot see. Everything that we do is so subconsciously activated because we've been speaking for so long, that it's so hard to get people to do the right things vocally without finding some strange mental pathway that you can use to reach that place. And so when I was to sing the highest notes in my register, the way that she found the pathways she found to get me there were very unique to me. And she explained how she had never used those words before. She had never come up with those terms for any of her other students. And real teachers, they have that effect. They have that ability to understand that you are seeking something and how to give it to you. And that's one of the real skills. When I was a vocal coach, that was what I quickly learned to be the most important thing, is just how can I impart the information to you in the best manner. Like, she auditioned her students. If you weren't good enough, just naturally, she wouldn't take you, because she feels that there is that the transfer of information has to be going to a mind that is, 100% dedicated. And I was very fortunate that she found my mind malleable enough to accept.
Yeah,
She taught me
I
so
certainly
much.
appreciate the love that some of the teachers that gave me, that actually invited me into their spaces, into a portion of their mind, to share things with me. But I couldn't agree with you more. The concept of an assembly line education system is certainly not designed for is not designed to bring about the best thinker, or like the best of you. And so the greatest teachers have an individual interaction in which their goal is to bring the best out from you. Those are the ones that have mattered to me the most, and those are the ones that I'm inspired by if I ever have to share a piece of information that somebody's seeking. The part that actually makes that an amazing thing to actually follow for the rest of your life is a teacher began the journey before you, but a real teacher never stops. If you turn your back towards what it is that gave you that authoritative space, and you are not consistently engaging in unfolding the many layers ahead of you, then you can't necessarily be an honest teacher. So I hold that very dearly to myself. Is
How many of those mentors did you have at that level?
I think I've now been able to successfully crack the algorithm to find people now where they're, everybody, that I meet inspires me, and everybody of sorts is a mentor for a line or longer.
Of course. Okay,
Right. I mean, I
see what you mean.
find that, but people of impact, right? Teachers that I've sought, I've probably had maybe 3 or 4. But the teachers that were gifted to me by the universe, plenty around. I was by default given, parents that have a very peculiar understanding of granularity.
As was I.
Yeah, and so I've definitely caught on to that aspect of it, and also balance. Balance is a tricky component of our lives as we seek information. So just remaining connected, helps.
Have you ever, you speak so many of, I'm like remembering so many questions that I've wanted to ask you, because like you'll go on these tangents and I can't bookmark it all. But one thing you said is you gain a lot of inspiration, if that word is even appropriate for guys like you and me. But like you talk about the natural world with a great admiration. So have you done a lot of eco-travel? Have you sought out places of great natural extravagance?
Absolutely. And I think that it definitely is something that...
So where at, brother, man?
I a lot of this, the answer is going to come from the fact that it's a very recent discovery of mine.
Good.
Where I needed to connect with the natural part of our world. Just something as simple as the Grand Canyon, which is not simple at all, right? I mean, something as simple when I say as far as where we're located right now,
of course,
and the ease of actually arriving at it, right? To places, in Austria, just like the Danube, right? I mean, the river itself,
Danube, yes.
It has areas which will actually blow your mind, right?
And there are characters to places like the Danube, the Nile, the Tigris.
Also the grandiosity of those things, right?
Rivers that fueled such civilization, such every facet they carry with them.
Yeah.
Almost like it's something in the air.
And another thing is, I've
maybe that's
been
pollution,
fortunate. I've been fortunate enough to kind of design life or envision things that even where I'm currently located, there's an incredible natural falls. That is raging every day, and I think that's one of the reasons why I feel after I arrived at like Great Falls National Park, for example, right? And I sat there the first time, and I was living around in the area and I had no idea this thing existed. So when I sat there, I chose my rock.
I've been trying to go there for so long.
I
just
chose
keep
my
getting
rock,
interrupted.
and I mean, I've spent 2 or 3 years just going to that place consistently, and just sitting there and just breathing, and just finding light from it. And so the natural world is so refined in its beauty. It's so harmonious.
That's
in
a
its,
perfect word, refined.
It's so articulate in the way it speaks to you. It's it's melody to me. It's melody to my eyes. And it's just absolutely wonderful. And then the sounds, right?
Yeah.
Those are the visuals. So it's the opposite, right? It's the melody to my ears, and it's the visual to my it's the melody to my eyes, and it's the visuals to my ears. Because when I actually go away from the location, the sound of that water and the birds will actually give me the visual of where I was. It's and that's kind of how music is, really. I travel around with these masters of this art form that appear to me at times where there's a great ustad that I follow, is in the art form of Qawwali, Ustad Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, and I can imagine myself going in a Greyhound, crossing like Middle America, going through like fields and stuff like that, with the sounds of his incredible art with Peter Gabriel. And that obviously traveled to so many different places, that being in an environment and actually absorbing its sounds can give you that environment whenever you want to pull from it. The serenity that I experience from the natural world is a great way of me to return back to my center, as I did when I was at that environment. That is why I chase that. It basically allows me to let the information that is in our little worlds of cities, and the little networks that we've built, consciously or unconsciously, through social media and stuff, to actually break free from it. It's the simple stuff. Just a fish swimming down the river is beautiful.
Well, also I try to think of it like so much of the natural world occurs due to countless, and literally countless mistakes.
Yeah.
The natural world is a brilliant teacher because in that regard, it has been molded entirely by incident
and accident,
and which is the best teacher, as you well know.
This particular concept that you're delving into has quite the depth, if I may, because there's the religious, the faith-based understanding that everything was put together and brought together, as is, or So I think that what's important for me to highlight in this is that no matter what it was, the form that you received it in was the most refined that you actually noticed, and therefore what is will be, right? You just have to make sure that you appreciate everything for what it is right now, and not go down too into the weeds of what the original
What if I want to go into those weeds? Like, for instance, we just had a nice walk, and I feel that the majesty of the scientific machine that certain people believe created this earth and all that inhabit it, how is that any less amazing and wonderful than the idea of a divine creator? And this is something I've recently kind of fiddled with, is this idea that the God of science is equal to it.
See, the finite truth as it stands is one that is bigger than our understanding.
Of course.
So to pursue it with that much intensity so as to actually resolve something at the end is a fool's journey.
But it's fun.
It's fun. I subscribe to the quest for wisdom leading you to places where you haven't been before. But to actually chase something that is very rarely gifted to people as a part of their limited existence on this planet, is being too egotistical in one's understanding of what they can reach. But whatever it is that they are able to, acquire as far as information and wisdom is a blessing, and you should still push through and push hard to dissect it further. But never to become the authority or the master on all finite subjects. The infinite nature of wisdom is something that is beautiful in itself.
Well, certainly.
It does not need to be owned for us to appreciate it. We don't need to become the owners of that information. So to transfer knowledge or to assert something with authority other than that which is, gifted to us as being a human being is very arrogant. And I genuinely appreciate the grandeur of everything that is above us. And I like to understand my place in this knowledge-seeking, path. That
I understand. I mean, I feel that at the end of the day, experiences, it's the only, in experience and knowledge, those are the only, I feel, real currencies in terms of if you want to look at this world in a dimension of body, mind, and soul. The only dimensions that I think exist in the dimension of the soul are one of experiences, ones of wisdom, ones of creativity.
Anything that reminds us that we're alive. Really.
Yeah.
Anything that reminds us that we're alive and that we're here. So whether it may be, you're getting pricked by an X-Acto knife, to remind yourself that, we bleed and therefore we are, is a good reminder, although it shouldn't be necessary for
Probably
anybody to actually use an X-Acto knife to find out whether they're alive or not.
Yeah.
A push here and there, and a jerk, a stumble, is like the Earth's way of actually saying, "Hey, there you are,"
Yeah, right.
And
I forgot about you. I can get behind that. You learn about, like, for instance, me. I try to approach every day in an examination of what am I doing for those three elements: the mind, the body, and the third.
Soul.
The soul, whatever soul means to you, to me, or to anyone listening, that the realm of something that is what, the raw uniqueness of humanity.
For me, the mind
and
the body is on rent to the soul in this journey.
I could see it that way, although I see it I see it like no, that doesn't work. No one out like a. Okay, we're gonna abandon this attempt at an analogy here, but I feel that they are dependent on one, because your mind is not functioning at its highest level when you do not take care of your body.
Sure.
And I feel that if you do not feed that third plane, the soul.
The soul is nourished through stimuli that are greater than physical nourishment.
Of course, but if they all are interconnected. So, like, for me,
chicken and egg, not applicable to this.
No,
I would think, because the soul is the one that governs the first plane of existence before the mind and the body are attached to it.
I mean, yeah, I guess. Although one cannot understate the feeling that you get when you have a very powerful vitality. And you see these people. You see people with very robust health. Like, good instance, or a good example of that was Fidel Castro, who just died at 90, but he was a very robust and healthy man, and you could see that about him.
Is it a stature?
This is a terrible example.
Is it a stature that
No.
would lead us to believe that his health would have actually done it, or is the health a prerequisite to such great stature that can be achieved?
I think they're more or less one and the same, because great vitality doesn't have to come with stature. This is assuming you're talking about literal
Well,
stature. But like, I'm saying like, when you see somebody who takes care of themselves, I think you're always just a little bit more, like everything they say is just a little bit more valid because you're like, okay, you've gotten out, you understand. You understand that.
Are you also insinuating that a person that takes care of their mind would obviously not ignore the other things that actually sustain the mind, which is the body and everything that pertains around, to
Exactly.
that.
And I'll give you an example of somebody abusing the third plane and as a result in detriment to the other two would be, for instance, indulging too much. The indulgence of things, of mind-altering substances, for example, that can break down your mind. Like, for instance, LSD was created by the government as a truth serum, like they're trying to find a truth serum. And at high enough doses, it breaks your mind, your brain tissue down, and you become completely insane. And so that could be a good example of somebody wanting an experience too much. They like this strange feeling, and it, as a result, like, oh, perfect example. No, what's his name? Fear and Loathing. Hunter S. Thompson.
Okay.
That was a man who got the most powerful, creative, and spark, or like the most powerful creative spark, drive, fury to create unbelievable, powerful writing, but he could only do it after like ruining his physical form through substance. And I think that would be a case of abusing the third realm, injuring the result of the other two.
As long as we're headed in the direction that we were meant to go, everything that is taking place right now is momentary, right? As long as the indulgence does not sway your path, it is to be experienced.
Of course, but I think it can, and that is where a man must be diligent.
Sure, and I'm definitely, a lot of people around me that have lived their lives in the past 10, 15 years would tell you that I am a very careful individual in terms of the experiences that I allow around me. But with that being said, I never lose sight of being fearless, which means that I will tackle any situation and any experience that would actually make me uncomfortable head on.
There's a wonderful quote by Theodore Roosevelt that I try to remember as often as possible. It is, "Man can in fact become fearless through the sheer dint of practicing fearlessness."
Yes.
And
I came from an environment in which fear was instilled in me as a coping mechanism of sorts, because the alternative would be broken bones and medical treatment that would be, kind of, detrimental to, say, perhaps the same resources being assigned for food,
Yes.
So I think that, but after a while, when you interact with the real world and you begin to take your first steps, you realize that, it's the fearless nature behind, jumping off of a ledge and, basically leap and you will find the net, right? And that's something that I really, really subscribe to, is like, just go ahead, take the leap, because the net will appear. You will be fine.
You know where I encounter that a lot is people my age who want to travel. And they look at me and they see a young man who's traveled an awful lot. I've been to almost all the countries in Western Europe. I've been to the Bahamas. I've been all around America, and I'm 23. And they see that as very unique or very exceptional. And they say, people have asked me, is there any trick to it? And I'm like, well, the trick, quite simply, is to convince yourself that any decision you make towards the goal of, let's take, for example, traveling, because most people take traveling and they wind it up into a huge amount of information when they realize the first step to travel is buying a plane ticket,
or even better,
writing it down on your calendar, and then getting on that plane.
Correct. So
and then you land,
making,
and then when you land, right? Okay, you need a taxi. All right, that's pretty simple. Taxis are yellow; they have signs. get in a taxi, right? You tell them the address of the hotel you're staying at, right? They take you to the hotel.
Assuming that you're not staying at the jungle and are homeless, obviously.
And then the next step after that is to check into your hotel. You have a reservation. You tell them about the reservation. Then you're in your hotel room, and then you're basically home. And then you just say, okay, where do we want to go? We want to go here, 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 here. All right, let's go. What do we need for that? Money? It's traveling is real simple when you break it down to a series of choices, and that's your leap and the net will appear tends to be like the net is civilization and the kindness of man and the existence of community on the planet. And when you just throw yourself into the international community, it will catch you.
I've always
sometimes weird, frayed, dangerous parts of the net will catch you.
No, not necessarily. So check this out, right? I've always looked at like we were talking about the light at the end of the tunnel and the journey, right? When you leave the East Coast of the U.S., for example, where we're located, and you decide that you're going to be traveling towards the West Coast, you leave at night with about 15 feet of visible area in front of your headlights. And you keep on moving forward because those 15 feet ahead of you will unfold every obstacle course, every turn, and it'll allow you to make that decision as you're traveling. You don't stop at a rest area and just say, oh my God, the road's going to finish, right? You keep on moving forward. But so all you really need to do is have an idea of where you're headed. But then just pay attention to what's around. If you have to swerve, you swerve. If you need to stop and brake and wait, you do that. But you just keep on moving forward. And
if you have to crash into a guardrail and then get a new car, you could do that as well.
Yeah, that's a real experience, Randy.
Yeah.
But
thank you for letting them know that.
The point being that it will unfold if you move forward. So the prerequisite to that entire travel, journey or log that you just shared is to get up first and to make that first step in the direction of your travel, and everything else from there will unfold. And the thing that you touched on very briefly is, you need money to do something. But this is all a byproduct of our existence, which means that it will all come. If we chase the exact resources that facilitate our experiences, we're actually kind of in trouble. We want to chase the experiences and let everything that facilitate them just line themselves up. And it happens as long as you are moving forward and you're taking that first step and allowing that next step to follow right before it.
I like what you said about the currency, buying the experience and focusing on the currency instead of the experience. You should focus on the experience first. And I think a really good example of that is, you probably will not understand this at all, but for those of you who play StarCraft 2, the pros never have more than like 1,000 minerals. They spend all of it because what's the good of having it? You need to train, you need to take it and make units out of it or build more buildings, take that other expansion. That's what the professionals do, and that's what you should do in your life when you're attempting to, when you have some idea of something that you'd like to experience. Namely, most people want to go to Europe to some degree. You need to focus on the experience and not on the money, or the currency.
The resources.
Yeah. Money is such a harsh word. Let's call it currency instead, because we're in an.
It just unfolds. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. It's very difficult when somebody is actually because obviously we've all been on the other side in order to be, in a space where.
I have a question. Yeah, I want to talk about that. That seems one thing. I hear this a lot listening to podcasts, people talking about, you just got to focus on your art and everything else will follow. Mm-hmm. That tends to come from people who have podcasts or have television shows or have that available to them. And I think what I'd like to do on this show is try to bridge the divide between people who do not have access to that and people who do have access to that. And the reality is the space in between is pretty small.
The people who don't have access to have their voices heard, if you ever meet them, they have already, quote unquote, arrived. they live that journey within them, and they emanate that regardless of whether you hear them on a large
Okay,
podcast
I think I did.
format.
Well, I was thinking more
Because
along the lines.
when you do hear them on a larger, grander scale, you just are a component of their audience at that point in
That's
time.
true. That's true. But I'm thinking more along the lines of like take for example Henry Rollins.
Okay.
Henry Rollins is a huge inspiration of mine, and for 26 years or so, he's been traveling the world with just a backpack and a camera, and he wants to experience everything. I have a very similar mindset to him.
Mm-hmm.
He's a huge inspiration on why I travel, why I get up in the morning. But it's understandable that if you do not have the money that comes with somebody who did so many seasons on Sons of Anarchy, it can be difficult for you to in your mind imagine that you can gather the necessary requirements in order to, go to Mongolia, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, do the Central Asian trip, or do that Southeast Asia trip, Singapore, or Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, or South America, Ecuador, Peru, Chile, Argentina, Brazil. It's people have this idea of what they'd like to do, but in reality, when you live in a world of bills, it's hard. And what I try to do is convince people that it's easier. You just have to, and I'm speaking from a guy who lives, or I'm speaking as a man who lives paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
But you just have to accept that this is the experience you want. That is the experience you will get, provided you put yourself on that road.
Well, you
Unpack
you
that
were,
for a bit.
You were talking about that video game that you very
Yes?
clearly insinuated I would not know anything about, and I don't. I'm not much of a video gamer, but the point in that was, greed and indulgence as a format of collection and hoarding is probably detrimental to mankind in general. It is use as much as you need to experience the things you need to do, which means you don't need millions of dollars to go and actually walk, a path between a mountain, right, and experience the beauty of each and every speck around it. To go to a hanging lake somewhere, you don't need to actually, because there are beautiful places all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
You could be in a place somewhere in Central Asia listening to this, and there's a mountain very close to you that has.
It's called the Altai Mountains. They're beautiful. I want to go there. Host me. Hit your boy up.
I mean, how many people along the Himalayas, appreciate it for what it is compared to the people across the globe who are striving each and every day to make that the absolute epitome of their journeys in life. So it's a beautiful thing to first appreciate what's around, but even the smallest experience can be absorbed without an incredible amount of resources. The resources are the physical health, which we should all be very grateful for if we
possess it.
If we possess it, and if the simplest thing, hey, can you walk? If you can walk and you can breathe, fight. Nobody should. When I say fight, I don't mean go to war. I mean fight for that little bit. Don't be tired and don't be in maintenance mode, because, and when I say don't, it's a harsh word. I don't really generally use things in that such finite terms, but try your best to resist the urge of being in maintenance mode. The unknown, like I said, is the most beautiful space to be in, and maintenance mode, to know, is getting too comfortable, because you have a lot more potential to actually not only learn but to also contribute.
I'm actually listening to you say this, and on the screen, because this my computer has gone to screensaver, it's just screensavering pictures from Europe. And I just remembered that those 2.5 months and that unbelievable experience, one that will be paramount for as long as I live, it cost me $3,800. Like, it's really a lot less than you might imagine for 2.5 months of existing. And
well,
traveling
that's
through
relative.
Europe.
That's relative, because the $3,800 would be an incredible amount of money for, say, for example, where I come from, right? Which
Hold
you could
on.
literally like
My podcast listeners, I don't think I don't think I have a big following in Karachi. I hope to I hope to change this.
But let me just tell you that the satisfaction that I have had having a cup of tea on the side of a mountain with somebody who was a local resident walking around offering it was far greater than actually being at a resort, a 7-star resort in Colorado, doing the same thing, because there was something so brilliant about the organic nature of where I was. Let me just very quickly remark that there were other things about that resort that were absolutely incredible, and I would return back. I would frequent that. But the thing is, it's the little things, and I remember.
It's what's around you. I liked that a lot.
I remember a moment in which, at some point in time, you shared with me an experience of lukewarm water, as it was flowing down a heated pipe, a vessel. in some jungle, right?
Yes.
And how that became
washing the sweat and the bugs and the fungus off of me.
And how that became a realization on how something as luxurious as like, a little, tap that can be, basically rotated so that you can get perfectly warm water became apparent to you, and how you appreciated both for whatever it was worth. But that ray of light that the jungle and its natural habitat provided was far more meaningful, than necessarily something that was really expensive. $3,800 was definitely not a part of that experience.
Yeah, I would suggest, if anyone wants to expand their consciousness, get yourself into the jungle. The jungle is such an amazing place. And yeah, you'll think, oh, snakes, centipedes as long as my arm. Look, I know. But I think that there's a switch, like a biological just circuit breaker that somebody switches, and it turns off certain creature modes depending on where we are, because we're such an adaptable species and because we live mostly in luxury. You would be so surprised that when you get in that jungle, how quickly you stop feeling heat. You stop feeling moisture on your skin. It's like your consciousness just floats through this unbelievable world where everything depends on each other so significantly. But you forget, you stop feeling insects on your skin. You stop feeling everything. And all what you get to do just before you hop in is you get to absorb the epitome of life. If you look at what the process of living creatures, things with carbon, can create, the jungle is the epitome. It's the most complex. It's the most interdependent. It's the biggest. It's just, the jungle will do wonders for your ability to appreciate what's around you.
And for what you can harvest from it as well.
Yes.
There's orchards within, right? I mean,
there's also death.
Well, until I realized how the burning of a forest is actually imperative,
yes,
and as far as growth is concerned and the ecosystem, only then did I realize how important it is for something to be broken down to the ground, from time to time. So from a traveling perspective, one thing that I genuinely subscribe to is moving. To pick yourself up from where you are and place yourself to where you would not have been. And that allows you to actually start fresh in a way where you have to fight some basic things. When we grow up in small towns or big cities alike, the box that you break at first, or you should break, is the one that guides all the learning that you are made up of. Now, we will all fall prey to creating a larger box, a little more comfortable box, as a result of breaking the first one. But as long as you're conscious and aware that the ceiling and you have enough room so that you can jump and scream until you want to break that box and you grow bigger than it, you should still do so. And Again, moving is it's been a very important part of my lifetime by accident at first, because when I was in Dubai growing up, and then I moved to Pakistan, and from Pakistan, moving to the US, it's always been, and within the US, like various states that I've lived in,
Yeah.
it's always forced me to push and to get to, being an introvert. I certainly, found it a little more difficult than the average person, but I still enjoyed the ability to learn from them. So small pockets of people, brilliant.
Do you subscribe to that introvert extrovert stuff? I think quite intensely that a human being has a personality for every speck in their life has its own unique set of traits. So in a group setting with lots of crowds, yes, somebody might be very, very sheltered, and because they don't dance, they might be considered an introvert. But then when you get them on the mic, suddenly they're talking about how, I don't know, some really aggressive things that you wouldn't imagine, and so in that sense, they are an extrovert. I just think it's a spectrum, and it changes.
I do subscribe to the personality characteristics piece, which is the
Myers-Briggs.
The Myers-Briggs. I like that concept, because not because. At first I completely rejected it, basically my ignorance.
Me too.
Where I was like, hey, this is like just like astronomy or something,
Yeah.
right? It was like, oh, the stars say that this is what. But the more I met a friend who really broke it down for me, and this person was diagnosing my personality the entire time, right?
Yeah.
So when they nailed it down, and they started like giving me like specs like that's just stimulated my, or caught my attention, I was like, hey, what is this, right? And so I started studying it a little bit, and I do subscribe to that. However, with that being said, we do wear different hats on a daily basis. And I feel that, you're a mother at some part of the day, then you become a bus driver, and then you become, somebody who's helping pedestrians, and then you become, somebody who's a clerk at a bank. We play these roles, and we have to honor them for what they are. Mother, daughter, father.
Exactly.
And so
husband,
yes,
that's an overlapping one, right?
Yeah.
You're a son, father, uncle, husband. You can be all of those things at once, but are you the same person in each one of those?
Those roles have certain beautiful guidelines that we should respect and certainly honor. So, to play the part of somebody else because you can visibly see them and criticize it rather than enjoying being in your own body is detrimental, because you've been blessed with that position, and to play that character out for its complete potential, because it's so temporary, you'll miss it when it goes away. So when you're son, you play the role of son, and you really try to do the best that you can, because when the knowledge and the realization that is to not be forever is a beautiful thing, and that's how one realizes the importance of paying attention.
Yes.
To every role, situation, moment, because it all intertwines with existence. And it surprises me when people, look at you funny if you say something like, this is the best day of my life, right? Or that, a lot of people ask you questions like, hey, if you were gonna die, are you gonna die happy? I've gotten these questions before, and I always say absolutely. I'm doing exactly what I was meant to or aligned myself to do, and this is exactly what makes me the most, humbly powerful person that I can be.
Certainly. I mean, I do say I mean a lot is something that of the many things I've learned in this podcast, I learned that I start a lot of sentences by I mean. Moving on, I think the existence of your roles, of all the different roles that you play, all the masks that you wear, all the characters you play. That's the way I like to refer to them. You are not the same character as a father that you are as a husband. Of course, this is stupid for me to comment on because I am neither. But let's take it this way: I am not the same son than I am a brother, and when I am playing soccer, I am not the same individual that I am when I'm a son, because as a soccer player, I am the most ornery bastard, prickly. I will let you know everything you've done wrong, and I don't care. And we share all of those different things, and it goes across everything. As a coworker, you're not the same from a coworker as you are, to whatever it is. But as you switch these different roles, I feel that your Myers-Briggs result, which I like the Myers-Briggs test. I think it was pretty cool, and I think it's a good way for young people to start questioning their own existence, their own makeup.
Yeah, as long as it's all geared towards the exploration of the self.
Of course.
It's beautiful.
And I think that, but I think as you shift through those characters,
I've also found
that Myers-Briggs result would change. Like if I did a Myers-Briggs test halfway through the championship game of the last season I played with the Misfits, my soccer team, I would probably not score the same as I would when I was calmly being interviewed by my girlfriend at the time.
I've found in my...
and that might be just the influence of testosterone, but it does change. I'm saying it does change whichever role you are playing.
So the first part of the Myers-Briggs is the introspection, but then there's another part to it, which I believe is an important tool to bring the best out of everybody around you, is if you study it for not yourself alone, but you study it for the variations, and you are able to not only isolate, or somebody voluntarily shares with you what their type is, you can actually empower them and use them to their best potential when they ask for it. Please don't use people for their best potential if they're not asking for it. But if somebody was to contribute in some project that you're doing, for example, and you understand their personality type, you are capable of bringing the best out in them, and at the most inherent, not the molecular level, but from societal norms, I would say.
Yeah. Can you do me a favor, Saqib?
Yeah.
Could you possibly walk the listeners, if they are not familiar with the Myers-Briggs situation, which you are, could you walk us through the 4 letters
that pertain to me? Or
let's take you as an example, or we can use it. Let's use me as an example, your host, the ENFJ. So extrovert, nurturing, feeling, judging.
Yeah.
So let's walk through those 4 phases.
So I'm going to first start off by saying that in no way, shape, or form am I an expert on this subject. And also, once I learned the specifics of it and how deep and granular it can get as an art form in itself, I have chosen to do other things, like maybe rehearse or play the piano instead.
Okay.
Maybe. But I do believe in it enough to recommend it as a learning tool.
But just break it down. What do each of those letters mean? Those columns.
I think the study in itself for all of the traits that are tied to these things are fairly well thought out. So when it comes to sensing, feeling, thinking, judging, these are beautiful. Now, I do not know enough about this to tell you that things don't change, because when we wear different hats, we embody the characters that, as a father, you would actually hold the authoritative role of making sure that you look out for that next crevice in the road or that deep hole where where your child's going to fall into. So that, there's a nurturing aspect, thinking aspect. There's a lot of things that are happening as a result of that role. But when you're a carefree guy, on the side of a mountain and your family's not around, and at that point in time, when you're hanging out with the guys, right, you're not as in tune with that. You're basically tuning into a different frequency. Now, what is the primary core component of our beings? To tap into that closely is to master one's own potential.
Of course, and that's the great quest of all disciplines.
Yeah.
From the tea ceremony to The art of war. It's
I
the
love that
ability
book,
to yeah, well, very dense. A lot of those old
Very quick too.
yeah, very yeah.
Quick to
have
battle.
you read the Book of Five Rings?
I have not.
Miyamoto Musashi.
No, I have not.
Oh,
I
it's
have
same
not.
same exact sort of thing,
Yeah.
philosophy
Yeah.
within war, but the result of following a discipline so intently that you reach a level of that core component that you mentioned that cannot change.
The examples that I've had of people before me have been through intense singular focus behind something. Now, the things that were missed in those examples were, people not mentioning that these people were also amazing at 40 other things. They kept on focusing on that singular aspect of life. Meanwhile, our journey is not to just become masters of one alone. In that journey, you will become quite advanced at a lot of other things if you are chasing true mastery in one. However, one of my friends in college, really appreciate his wisdom, once said to me that, it's the way of the world that you must be a master of one at least to gain respect and to actually, have a voice. Now, while that
Do you agree with that?
I agree with it in retrospect because I was only able to acknowledge it when I was fiercely chasing the, not the mastery per se, but I had found my vessel. Or
Okay, I gotcha.
I had found the perfect canoe to actually ride out that entire, to paddle away with.
Yeah.
Because the gear was perfect. It had like, an iPod on
There
the
you
side.
go.
I had like my
Perfect.
steer. I had found the perfect, vehicle to float in. Only then did I realize that, that it mattered. But I do believe that chasing one thing where you can actually develop mastery by going through the discipline behind it is absolutely imperative for you to be able to function or even dissect other disciplines. I mean, it's the great people, the great minds that I'm inspired by. Even if you are an archer of a high caliber, if they are a greater mind at what they do, should they take up archery, they are going to kick your ass
I
in
love
a
that, yeah.
shorter time frame than you actually took. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And that brings us back to aptitude is relative. So even the archering master will respect the person who's coming in just as much as the person who's been doing it for a while.
Yeah, that's very profound. Is relative. So many things are relative. You talked about the importance of just that warm water in that jungle situation. That's my idea, is that comfort is relative. And it's like you can be happy existing when all you have is a chair and some tea.
Unfortunately,
and it's like there are
to record music you need electricity. So
you
in my
do
so
that.
the fact that the electricity would go out for 12 hours and everybody would just sit around and be like,
during those thunderstorms, yeah.
oh, well, thunderstorms or where I come from, they kind of just go out.
Okay.
So,
sure.
but here's the thing though, at that point in time, we don't focus on the lack of electricity. We focus on the beauty of an acoustic instrument. And we
Yep.
delve into that. And
See,
we
that is
capitalize.
perspective, ladies and gentlemen. That's what you do not get going to your average center of learning. That's the wisdom of going out and experiencing the world. And I would think when we talk about success, we being minds who think about such things, yours truly, though I am not the least qualified person to do it in the world. We talk about success. There's generally two ways of viewing it. And the most commonly sought way is financial stability, that sort of thing. But if you want to talk about success in terms of grasping the more fundamental principles of our existence, one of which is the wisdom of perspective and understanding that the person sitting across from me who grew up in Dubai and Karachi, who was just happy, who saw the beauty of an acoustic instrument, whereas me, never bought an acoustic instrument because I thought they were lame.
And also, an amp was always available to be plugged in.
Not true. I had to buy my own amp. I'd like to make that perfectly clear. Anyway, that's just perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can get another perspective, cherish it. Because other people's perspectives, that's the closest reality to the highest order of academia that you can access as a regular person, is somebody else's view on things. We, as Americans, we went through a very strange last couple of weeks with this whole election. We had an election. It was very unusual. And what I am a young man who has many young friends who are liberals, and many of them were very upset at the outcome of our election. And in order to comfort them, I tried to impart a bit of what I would consider wisdom, which is that in this particular state, in American politics, you could never find this many neutrals. There are so many people who are looking at this with a very neutral eye, and that is so rare in all things, much less politics, to find somebody with a neutral eye, willing to examine all angles. And I was telling people, go out, find these neutrals, talk to them. That is a perspective that is so rare and so valuable. And part of the reason why, well, I suppose I wasn't going to get upset about it either way, but because I'm one of those neutrals, but, meeting as many as I did, like going to work and just meeting these people who just didn't care one way or another. And they would bring up all these points of view that the polarized sides would never be able to assimilate in their rage. So I just think you can never have enough perspective, and I think that's so important. And part of the reason why I love talking to you so much is because you provide that perspective. You are a bit of a rags to riches sort of experience.
Well, I don't know. Well, I haven't even started speaking yet, let's put it this way. But I think I subscribe to the idea. It's a saying that comes from, my side of the world and my side of, perspective, let's put it this way. Fame is actually detrimental to society. And while I will not comment on the politics or the political nature of the times we're in, fame is detrimental to society because to acquire a position of power, one must now, in this day and age, act as erratically as possible in order to generate noise. Yeah, that's a marketing plan. But, for everything else, if success equals wealth, which is defined by perhaps buildings and power over man, sure, that's the way to do that. But if wealth is good health, knowledge, and curiosity supplemented by childish, exploration, or curiosity, and just in general, staying connected with living things and situations around us, I think that there's other ways to do it. There's other ways to get there. Yeah.
Flea, a huge, being a bass guitarist for as long as I have, Flea no doubt makes his way into my life to some degree at different stages.
As a drummer, regardless, or anybody, Flea makes an entrance in your life.
Even if if you're an economist, Flea makes it.
Flea makes an appearance at some point in time and really slaps that bass out.
He says the best thing you can be is a child, and I think I can subscribe to that.
Yeah, entirely. I think that the moment when you lose that sparkle, that is the result of that childlike exploration and the curiosity. I think that's when a person gets old. We should never lose that spark, or we should always try to empower that spark within other people if you see somebody that may not have it instead of actually looking down on them. You should just
again, perspective.
You should empower it out of them. Yeah.
You need to see him not as somebody who does not possess your qualities. You need to see him as a man who, or a woman, an individual whose journey was separate from you.
Yeah, and aptitude is relative. The moment they catch on, they're about to reveal more ways to around the thing by showing you caves that you had not entered before. So
I mean, that's a really great message to end on, I think. Actually, aptitude is relative, perspective is everything. The best thing you can be as a child. There's so many lessons that viewers could, I hope, take away from this 2.5 hours worth of rambling. But I just thank you so much for being able to talk to me today, Saqib. I thank you for your diligent curiosity and your tireless knowledge seeking. I thank you for your wonderful craft of music, your hospitality, which is wonderful. And I just can't thank you enough for being part of my life and part of my journey.
I equally appreciate you, Andy. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening, everyone. That's all for us now. Until next time, thanks so much for listening.